The Russians attacked Sumy with strike drones. 2 civilians were injured. 3 gas stations and critical infrastructure facilities were damaged. A large-scale fire broke out. Smoke and flames rose dozens of meters into the air. Rescuers managed to contain the powerful blaze. But emergency services warned there is a real threat of enemy attacks on gas stations. TSN correspondent Anna Mokhno will give you the details. Everything is engulfed in flames. Rescuers are working in extremely difficult conditions. A large-scale fire broke out after the Russian army struck one of the gas stations in Sumy. Police report that the enemy attacked the city with strike drones. Hits were recorded in the Zaporizhzhia and Kopapkovsky districts. 2 men were injured. Critical infrastructure facilities and 3 gas stations were damaged.
The enemy is striking. The enemy's furious. We need to be as careful as possible.
That's what they're saying at the gas stations themselves. The Russians are deliberately targeting gas stations. Here are the consequences of one of the strikes in the Sumy region the day before. Everything around is burned out and destroyed. By striking fuel infrastructure, the occupiers want to disrupt logistics, complicate transportation, and also create additional pressure on civilians, experts explain.
All our gas stations have been damaged. Those gas stations that are still operating, unfortunately, are also being blocked from working by constant shelling.
This is what the regional manager of one of the area's gas station chains says. At the gas stations, they had to adapt to the new reality of working under constant danger.
We spend more time not working than actually working. The very format of customer service has become very fast, also as a safety measure.
The gas station workers say they have undergone training in mine safety and tactical medicine so that everyone can provide first aid.
We were provided with the necessary first aid kits, tourniquets, and other first aid supplies.
And they add, customers themselves also need to take care of their own safety. Ignoring the air raid siren at a gas station can cost you your life. The enemy strikes treacherously.
When gas station employees signal that you need to leave the station very quickly, it's better to do so, even if you haven't finished refueling.
Right now, we're talking about the lives of gas station employees and your own life. So once again, I urge you to be understanding, and at the first opportunity, whether it's an alarm or something else, please move away from the gas station.
The military administration confirms, despite the challenges, gas station operators are managing to supply the region with fuel.
We'll do our best to provide the region with the necessary amount of fuel. We will also make sure and try to keep fuel reserves for critical services and to have fuel reserves for ordinary citizens.
The main thing, they say, is to save human lives. Anna Mokhno, Alexander Kovtunets, Sumy region, TSN 1+1. And in the evening, Russia attacked Zaporizhzhia. It is known that at least 5 people were injured. There are people trapped under the rubble. There were strikes on residential buildings and the industrial zone. Pavlorad in the Dnipropetrovsk region was also under attack. There, 3 people were killed and 28 were injured, including a 2-year-old child. 3 of the wounded are in serious condition. The Russians dropped aerial bombs on the city. A fire broke out. According to the regional military administration, a food industry enterprise was damaged. In less than half an hour of heavy airstrikes, Kherson was hit 10 times. 4 people were injured. Residential buildings were targeted. Heavy bombs also destroyed an educational institution. In addition, the drone terror continues. 8 civilians were injured. The occupiers used Iran drones to strike energy facilities near the Chernihiv border. Because of the drone attack, a field in the Nizhyn district caught fire, burning up 23 hectares of rye. In Mina, the Russians struck a food industry enterprise. The Russians wounded 5 people in the Donetsk region. They attacked with glide bombs and drones, destroyed an apartment building, damaged private houses, an educational institution, and a business. In Yurchenkove, Kharkiv region, the Russians killed an elderly woman. In Kharkiv itself, they hit 2 gas stations. A truck and a gas tank caught fire. Zolochev was attacked 4 times. A girl and a man were injured. In Stary Saltiv, a drone set a car on fire. 2 women were hurt. In Izium, Bandarali damaged a motor dega. There is 1 injured person. And the Russian army is using depleted uranium munitions during attacks on the Chernihiv region. Dangerous components were found in the Geran-2 attack drones that shelled the region throughout May and June. This was reported by the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU. The occupiers are using radioactive elements in R-60 MIM missiles, which they are adapting for their drones. At the impact sites, specialists recorded radiation levels 80 times higher than normal, which poses a threat to people's health and the environment. Examinations showed that the warheads of the missiles contain the nuclear materials uranium-235 and uranium-238. The Security Service of Ukraine has opened a case regarding a war crime. Local residents are urged not to approach if they find drone, missile, or ammunition fragments, but to immediately call specialists. Closing the skies and a proper approach to mobilization. These are the tasks the president sets for the General Staff and the Ministry of Defense. Volodymyr Zelenskyy promised a shake-up of the personnel in the Ukrainian army. He expects proposals from Commander-in-Chief Mikhailo Drapati. The president announced this at a press conference with Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin. He called the situation in the agricultural sector a separate challenge. The Russians are attacking civilian vessels. Since yesterday, not a single one has entered the port of Greater Odessa. That's why the government appointed a separate Minister of Agrarian Policy. The new head of the Ministry of Infrastructure, another agency that was separated from the previously unified regional infrastructure bloc, is tasked with preparing resilience plans because the pace of fulfilling these tasks 6 months before winter is unsatisfactory. The new Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, Ihor Klimenko, will be responsible for getting through the cold season. As for Rustam Umarov, his new position has not yet been determined, but we know that he'll focus on defense agreements and negotiations, most likely as Ukraine's ambassador to the United States. At first, as Zelenskyy said, he offered the ambassadorship to Yulia Sviridenko. Negotiations with her are still ongoing. And the biggest changes in the last 2.5 years will take place in the military. The president also announced that he offered the position of Deputy Prime Minister to former Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov.
Both Drapati and Kama, they will have to accomplish the main task today after this long and exhausting war for everyone. The tasks I set for both Fedorov and Sinsky, because you can't separate things and say someone is to blame and someone isn't. The issue of closing the skies, the issue of the territorial recruitment centers, the issue of having a normal, if you can even call it that, approach to mobilization. All of this, until the war is over, will have to be done together in alliance. Unfortunately, such an alliance didn't happen earlier. Of course, I believe that Mikhailo is still part of the team. I offered him several positions. The last position, without going into the details of all our meetings, the last position was Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine for military innovations.
And during the meeting with the Prime Minister of Ireland, Volodymyr Zelenskyy discussed further sanctions pressure on Russia and the next EU tranches to finance defense production. According to the head of state, Ukraine's key priorities remain strengthening air defense and supplying missiles for the Patriot systems. Ireland is joining in financing their procurement. This country will hold the presidency of the European Union for the next 6 months. Therefore, it is Ireland that will set the agenda for the EU Council and promote the opening of all negotiation clusters for Ukraine as part of the 22nd Sanctions package. The leaders also discussed the diplomatic track, specifically how to force Russia to the negotiating table. Zelenskyy also announced his upcoming visit to the United States, where he plans to discuss the resumption of trilateral negotiations with the Russians together with the American side. The European Union has approved the 21st package of sanctions against Russia. After lengthy discussions, the ambassadors managed to agree on another round of energy and financial restrictions. The oil price cap has been frozen. Transactions with a number of Russian banks are banned, and the blacklist will be expanded with a record number of new entries. This isn't the full list of new restrictions, but which sanctions had to be dropped in order to get all member states to agree to the new package? All the details from Radio Svoboda correspondent Oriana Stepanenko.
The 21st package is much weaker than originally planned. One diplomat joked that the endless search for compromises has turned it into Swiss cheese, meaning it's full of holes. For example, Russian soldiers who fought against Ukraine will still be able to travel freely to the European Union. Italy and France oppose the entry ban. These are the very countries that receive the most visa applications from Russians. They insisted that entry to the European Union should be regulated by visa policy, not sanctions, and that in practice it's supposedly difficult to verify who actually participated in combat against Ukraine and who did not. In the end, EU countries abandoned this idea in the sanctions package and settled for a political commitment to change visa rules. The necessary support for this within the European Union still needs to be found. However, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, called this an important step toward an official entry ban to the EU for Russian combatants and welcomed the overall agreement on the package.
While Ukraine is building military momentum, our sanctions continue to undermine the economic foundations of Russia's war effort. We are adding 32 more Russian banks to the list of organizations with which transactions are prohibited. We are freezing the oil price cap adjustment for a year so that the Russian war machine cannot benefit from market shocks.
For 12 months, the oil price cap will remain at $44.70 per barrel. In this way, the European Union has moved away from the automatic mechanism for reviewing it. Otherwise, the cap would have jumped to almost $60, which would have provided Russia with additional revenue. There will be more ships from the so-called shadow fleet on the blacklist. It transports Russian raw materials bypassing the current restrictions. For the first time, sanctions are also being imposed on ships that assist the shadow fleet. This is the largest sanctions package in the past 4 years, covering a total of 218 new positions. More than 100 banks and cryptocurrency operators, over 40 shadow fleet vessels, as well as several oil refineries in Russia and Belarus that help Moscow continue the war, have come under the restrictions. The EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, spoke about restrictions targeting 50 enterprises in the Russian military-industrial complex, including key participants in the production of Russian long-range drones. Bulgaria managed to secure the easing of some measures. Patriarch Kirill, as well as one of the founders of Lukoil, Vagit Alekperov, were removed from the blacklist, and Greece, whose objections delayed the approval of the package, secured a certain concession regarding the transport of Russian LNG to third countries. The European Union made an exception for contracts signed before the start of the full-scale war. Expanding such shipments will not be allowed, and the Council of the EU will review this exception every year. Formally, the 21st package is planned to be approved this evening. From Brussels, Zoriana Stepanenko, Marichka, Radio Svoboda. Especially for TSN 1+1.
It took off abnormally and crashed into the ground in the Moscow region. A Russian Su-57 military aircraft has crashed. Local media are reporting this. Preliminarily, the accident occurred in the Odintsovo district. The pilot failed to handle the training flight, and this Sushka is considered a real pride of the aggressor country. It's a fifth-generation multi-role fighter jet developed to replace the heavy Su-27s. Russia has only about 24 of these and mostly uses them to launch missiles at Ukrainian cities. Drones attacked an oil refinery in Russia's Ulyanovsk region. The large-scale fire at the site was clearly visible even from a distance. Amid the threat of UAVs at the Ulyanovsk airport, Russian aviation implemented the Carpet Plan, and later the local governor confirmed the drone attack, stating that they struck a fuel and energy facility in the Novospassky district. He did not disclose any further details. However, in eyewitness footage, it's clearly visible that the fire engulfed fuel tanks and thick black smoke is still spreading throughout the area. One of the most important oil hubs in the Urals also came under attack from our drones last night. In addition, drones attacked energy infrastructure in the occupied cities of Yalta and Luhansk. Voronezh also experienced a massive attack last night. Locals shared spectacular footage where you can clearly hear the moments of impact. Russian monitoring OSINT channels report that one of the likely targets of the attack on Voronezh could have been another logistics hub of the Wildberries company, Russia's largest online marketplace, whose warehouses have already caught fire more than once this week in different regions of the Russian Federation. For example, the company's hubs in Krasnodar and Nevenomysk were attacked just last night. They continue to smolder, even a day after the successful attack by Ukrainian drones. It's burning like crazy. It's not just some canisters, it's their whole paste that's on fire. And the smoke is drifting closer to Putin's palace. Weather websites are forecasting that the polluted air could reach the residence of the Russian dictator in Gelendzhik. In Krasnodar Krai itself, where Putin's palace is located, locals have already been warned not to go outside unless absolutely necessary, to wear respirators, and to keep their windows tightly closed. Unfortunately, the level of pollution over Putin's palace will be relatively low. But the resort towns of Sochi and Tuapse will also get their share of Ukrainian air sanctions. There's a fire at the warehouse of one of Russia's most famous online platforms, Wildberries. The day before, something landed there in the Krasnodar region, and earlier in the Moscow region. Public street phones have been installed in temporarily occupied Crimea. They're meant to be used for emergency calls to the police and ambulance, providing an alternative to mobile communication, which is being jammed due to frequent Ukrainian attacks. They're kind of like payphones from the past, but the devices themselves look more like old home phones. Although it's likely they really can work without electricity, since there are also reported power issues on the peninsula. By the way, after the strikes on the temporarily occupied peninsula, there are not only problems with communication and electricity, but also fuel shortages. Sports journalist Luca Esposito was killed in southern Italy. This was reported by the European Federation of Journalists. The burned body of the journalist was found on a farm plot in the Chiafi area. It is believed that 53-year-old Esposito was first shot and then set on fire. The body was discovered by firefighters who arrived at the scene of the incident. The deceased was identified by an abandoned car found nearby. The case is being investigated by the Salerno prosecutor's office. The motives for the crime are unknown. Luca Esposito worked at the Regional Environmental Protection Agency of the Campania region, but he was better known as a freelance sports journalist. He collaborated with the daily newspaper La Città di Salerno, the OT channel TV station, and was the editor-in-chief of a football news website. In Poland, a woman suspected of attacking two 13-year-old Ukrainian teenagers has been detained. The incident involving the suspect and the minors took place on Saturday evening in the city of Legnica. According to the mother of the victims, the children were playing near the pool with other teenagers when a woman approached them with her own children and started making remarks because they were speaking Ukrainian. During one of the arguments, the woman hit two girls and a boy who tried to protect them. Law enforcement officers obtained footage from cameras, interviewed witnesses, and gathered evidence. Now, the 26-year-old woman has been officially charged. She is charged with causing bodily harm that resulted in health problems lasting no more than 7 days, as well as coercion involving violence or unlawful threats. For this, she faces up to 7 years and 6 months in prison. They pray to survive. They pack their whole lives into a few bags and don't leave their four-legged friends behind. Evacuation crews are helping locals leave Druzhkivka in the Donetsk region. The city's under constant attack from the Russians. The occupiers are targeting people's homes and civilian cars as they try to escape the devastated city. More details in the report by TSN correspondent Anna Mochno. Good afternoon. Supporting each other, the women walk toward the evacuation vehicle. Can I say a prayer? Go ahead. Just to survive. Here, enemy drones hunt anything that moves. Police officers keep an eye on the sky, drive wherever they can, and on some streets they go on foot. Explosions. All around are homes destroyed by the Russians. By the side of the road, there's a wrecked car. White scarves help them. They tied one on to mark it as a civilian car, hoping the occupiers wouldn't attack. But they attacked anyway, husband and wife. They were acquaintances of this woman. It's hard for her to talk about it. The couple was killed. Nearby, police are evacuating several locals. They take them out from under shelling to a safe place and then return again. They passed by a burned-out civilian car. This man tried to escape in it, but the Russians didn't let him. He says he survived by a miracle. Are you sleeping?
Flashes. I don't know who opened the door, whether it was me or if it just happened and I fell to my knees.
That's why he turned to the police for help. The evacuation crew keeps moving through the courtyards. All around are damaged apartment buildings. Before the Russians arrived, children's laughter and local conversations could be heard here. Now it's explosions. This lady is already waiting by the entrance with her four-legged favorite. Beautiful girl. Oh my God. A man comes out right after her. He carries out their things. They say their whole life fit into just a few bags. After a while, all of them are already in a safe place. Thank you so much, guys. The Russians target those who are trying to help. For example, an enemy strike damaged the office of the city branch of the Red Cross Society. Police are urging people not to delay evacuation and to reach out to the White Angel crews. Anna Mokhno, Alexandra Kovtunets, Donetsk region, TSN 1+1. The armed forces will be assisted by Marichka. That's the name given to the artificial intelligence system for service members. It will analyze data about combat operations and provide recommendations to commanders. For example, what resources are needed or what the potential losses might be. It can also model the operational situation on the map and report various changes. Previously, according to the Central Scientific Research Institute of the Armed Forces, such planning would have taken 6 to 12 hours, but now AI will do it in just a few minutes. But it won't replace commanders. The final decision will be made by them, so the system will only serve as an assistant to save time and resources. The creators of the system remind us that the armed forces have long been using artificial intelligence for working with drones, gathering, and managing information. And the arrival of Marichka will make the Ukrainian military even more technologically advanced.